Good evening, everyone. Well, the elections have been run and won, and tonight we have a bumper show. Glennie, we didn't win the election, so we're back on.
We are back on.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Friday Frothy. Glennie, how are you, my friend?
Yeah, been a great week, mate. Very busy.
It has been busy.
You've been away.
Yes,
and,
just got back. Now, to all our viewers who are normally on live, who are communicating with us, guys, unfortunately, this is a pre-recorded interview. Most of the interviews are, aren't they, Glennie?
Yeah, that's all right.
Just before we do start, mate, I've got to say, as we will start most shows, thank you to Corey's Garden and Landscaping for
I'll just put that one out.
Sponsor of the Friday Frothy. And
Corey, thanks for that,
of
mate.
the beer. So Corey, hope you're well, mate. Thank you very much. Just wanted to quickly throw out, if you don't mind, Glenn, I touched on the Tasbash variety shindig that I'm involved in, and just
great job too.
Local people out there. June, there's a froth going right there. June the 2nd at Bell's Bell Reeve, we're having a official car launch.
Ring the bell.
And in the links below, please have a look if you're local, if you're in Hobart, because we need as many people to attend to try and raise money for sick and disadvantaged kids for variety. So please get on that, guys. Have a look. It's an all-you-can-eat and lots and lots of gin and different beer and just tasting and something like that. So there'll be plenty of food and plenty of drink available on the night. So during the week, Lenny, I received an email from a person called Christy. Now, Christy is from the Eastern Suburbs Rugby Union Football Club.
Yep.
Now, once again, this is a local matter.
Yes.
Rugby Union Club, it's the only club on the Eastern Shore.
Always has been, mate. It's been around, actually. Paul, our mate, used to play for them.
Oh, really?
Eastern Shore Rugby Union, that is Union,
that is it. That is it. So,
there's only one.
Christy has got in contact with us and asked us if we can try and help boost some numbers because they're wanting to get some extra players and juniors into the club. So, Christy, we're going to do everything we can to try and get you some players there. She's also mentioned that we might be able to do a live show from the club.
Well, I've been in the club. I've had a game of football out there before.
Now, Christy, if you're watching, Glenn will tell you, I'll make this bigger than Ben-Hur. All right? So if we can get this organised, what I'm proposing, if it's okay with you guys, that we'll come out to the club, we'll do a live show, we'll organise a special guest that we can interview. We can interview some of the people at the club.
Yep.
And maybe have a bit of live music happening as well.
Yeah, I can sort of let you know what I know about rugby union.
Probably not much. So, Christy, I'll be in contact with you soon. That's the Eastern Shore Rugby Union Club over at North Warrane. So, guys, get in contact. Once again, we'll have a link down the bottom. If you're interested, get your kids into rugby union and support the club, support a local club.
It might be a joke, but I don't think Israel will be coming, will he?
No, I don't think so. But I do have something
on his side.
Well, yes, I do. Now, Glennie.
Jeff.
Tonight is a massive show. We're about to get in contact with the master, Ken Piesse. He's used to be an author of 75 books. I reckon he's 76 now. Could even be 77. He's a commentator. He's a legend of AFL and cricket. Knows everyone. We've talked him up. We've talked him up.
We can't talk about anymore.
And up. And he's coming back on the show. We're about to get in contact with him, so we'll get on to him in a second. But I just want to, just before we start, don't forget, subscribe if you like what we're doing. 78 subscribers now, so we're growing.
And can I just say, if people don't know, because a lot of people don't because of our age, even though I'm a young, sprightly 20-year-old, but even with Ken, I mean, if a lot of people don't know who Ken Piesse is, this is the way you're going to find out. And you can Google. You can actually use Google and find out a little bit more about Ken Piesse. Yes, he's been around for a long time, and as Jeff's pointed out, that's how you will know what this guy knows about sport.
Absolutely amazing.
There's no one knows anything better.
All right, well, let's get the show on the road. We'll get Kenny on right now.
Right now.
Good evening, Ken. Welcome to the show. Thanks for coming back on again, mate. It's fantastic to talk to you again.
Gee, by popular demand. Thanks so much, lads. I really appreciate it.
We're rapt to have you on, and we know we're lucky, so we've got a heap of questions for you. And
certainly are. Yes, mate. It's quite funny, actually, Ken. I even in Tasmania, I've been going around and telling people that we're having you back on the show, and once again, the amount of people who know of you and have heard of you, it's just it's amazing. So you've got a pretty good following down here in Tasmania.
Yeah, there's a few pieces in Tassie. Actually, my great-great-grandfather It might have been, I reckon it was. He was the big man on the campus in the 1850s. He was part of the Tasmanian Legislative Assembly. His name was Frederick, and he was a really big honcho. And I think somewhere there's a Piesseville, and I know that plenty of Piesses live down there, including my lovely sister Annie, who's comes from Jeremy Howe, the jumping jack country. I don't have to tell you where that is. So I love Tassie, I love Hobart, and I'll tell you what, today it's really exciting because later tonight I've got a fellow from Hobart coming across. He just happens, I'm going to have dinner with him, the Australian Test cricket captain, Tim Paine. Would you believe that? How good is that?
How fantastic.
Fantastic. Absolutely brilliant, Ken.
Wow.
And a great lad he is too, let me tell you.
So there's about 180 of us there, but he's still going to be having dinner with me.
Yeah.
Like I'm sitting next to him, like, as you know, I'm the president of the Australian Cricket Society, and literally we're doing a pre-Ashes big dinner at the Junction Oval, which is now the new Victorian cricket base. It's a beautiful old oval, and Tim is flying across with Bonnie, especially. Sally in Hobart's looking after the two little kids.
Oh, wow.
Charlie is just newborn, as you guys know. I think he's probably 2 or 3 months old at the most at the moment. So it'd be a nice break for them. But I've been typing out some questions today to ask Tim later on tonight. So it should be a heap of fun. And would you believe Tim's doing this as a favour? I said, well, can I give you a fee? He said, no, not at all.
Yeah.
Aren't all the proceeds going to the Ponting Foundation? I said, spot on. He said, that's good enough for me. So, it really is something special to have the reigning Test captain on the eve of the Ashes Summit, just weeks away, coming to speak. So that's all happening in a couple of hours' time.
Now Ken, is one of the questions on your list is it have you heard of the Friday Frothy?
I sure have. A lot of I put it up like it's amazing actually. I tell you what, with Facebook, like I put it up with the link, and a lot of my mates were listening to it and loved every word. So it's been really good. And I've been putting in a few lines about the Junction Oval. For those that don't know, they used to play league footy there, St Kilda, years and years ago. And big Carl Dittrich, the St Kilda legend of the 60s, he made his debut there, and Doc Baldock used to lead out the Saints. There's another I'm talking about Tasmanian royalty now.
Yeah,
but my favourite Tassie story, or one of the favourite stories in relation to the Junction Oval, concerns Shane Warne and Dean Jones. And all week, Jones, who was on 3AW over here on the radio, they were going to play a big club game, Melbourne, Jones versus St Kilda, Warne. And literally Jones was boasting, as he tended to do. He can run away with himself a few times, Dino. He was saying, Warnie, I'm going to hit you so far into the Albert Park Lake, which is around about half a mile away, mind you, out of the junction. And Shane said, I look forward to that. Well, by the time Dino came in, Shane normally bowled from the city end, from that Albert Park end, Albert Park Lake end, with a nice little north-easterly breeze coming over his shoulder. But this day, the wind was coming from the other end, and so he bowled from the Fitzroy Street end, which is, if you like, the opposite end, and he was bowling towards the lake. And Dean Jones came in, and Jason Jacoby was the wicketkeeper for St Kilda, and he said, Jason said, you're going to have a bit of trouble hitting Warnie for that big six from this end, Dino. And Dino said, Jacko, if anybody can do it, Dean Jones can, he said.
Then along came Jones.
Yes. Now, Ken, as we've spoken before, mate, we put the call out to some of our viewers and let them know that you were coming on, and they sent us in some questions to ask you. Some of them are good, some of them we've probably all know the answers and we've heard it before, but
mate, keep them brief.
We'll keep them brief, but we'll start off with the first one, mate, and this is a dicey one. I can't remember who these are from, so I apologise to the viewers. I didn't actually write your names down, so I'm sorry, but the first question, mate, is which Ablett is better, Gary Jr. or Gary Sr. in your eyes?
Gary Sr. was more spectacular. You'd pay the price of admission. You'd a little bit like watching Mark Waugh bat. I asked that question to Barry Richards. I said, if you had an opportunity to watch a century from one of the Waugh twins, and Barry said, I'd cancel golf if I knew Mark Waugh was going to make the 100, but if Steve Waugh was to make the 100, I'd just keep on playing. playing as per normal. If I knew Gary Ablett was going to be on, like he was in that famous series in 1989 when he kicked something like 21 or 22 goals in 3 finals, and at Waverley, I reckon he had a shot from about 120 yards out, Gary Ablett, and he balked the man on the mark, and he'd been practising it during the week at then Cardinia Park, and literally he kicked this long bomb goal because nobody could kick a torpedo punt like Gary Ablett. Maybe the only one, Gary Lyon, who was a terrific tough footballer for Melbourne, and obviously now very much the media star. Gary is spectacular. He could do amazing things, and I think his best was as good, if not better, than any other footballer I've ever seen. But little Gary Abletts Jnr, to win the Brownlow medals, to go away and play in a poor team and yet still be a superstar, and this year with Geelong, early, along with Collingwood, early premiership favourites, to see him playing so well, it's just been wonderful. And I call him the little master, and he is a little champion. And his consistency is one of the remarkable things about him. When he first came down to Geelong, he was such a baby-faced little boy, blue-eyed, but now, he's obviously got a few more years on him, but his consistency and his importance to Geelong is almost as important as it was going back 10 years in his heyday. So I think Gary Ablett Jr. has been the better player. Gary Ablett Sr. is the guy that I would cross the road to go and see. If somebody said to me, hey mate, Ablett's on today, he's going to kick 9 or 10, I'd want to be there for that.
Yeah, he was more. I was lucky enough to watch Gary Ablett Sr. a lot of his football, and he was, like you said, more spectacular. The things that he did, but for sheer consistency, like as a different player. They're different players. One's a forward, was a non-baller. Although the move for Gary Ablett Jr. Ken to the half-forward line for Geelong, that's obviously might keep him in football a little bit longer because he's so smart, and with the ball coming out of the middle so quickly, he just looks another player again. All of a sudden, he's invented himself again into that position.
Well, he is so smart, and they used to say half-forward flank was the footballer graveyard because he just couldn't get enough of the ball, but Gary Ablett has made that position his own, and he's so elusive, a little bit like a Robert Harvey at his very best, like rarely tackled was Robert Harvey. He would just do these pirouettes and balks, and Gary Ablett, he invariably gets his foot to the ball, and he shares it with others, and what I really love about it is he's so exhilarated by the experience of playing back in his hometown. And for those that know and love Geelong, it's just a fabulous, it isn't a suburban experience because Geelong's in the country. If you like, it's a big country town. But to have a Saturday night or a Saturday game at Cardinia Park, and for Geelong to win, and the crowd all go out happy, and the whole working week in Geelong is just spectacular because the local footy club's doing so well. So Gary must just be really loving being back part of that, and I just hope for his sake that he can stay well. He might have a rest here or there, especially on some of those interstate games, but if that's going to be the case, football's going to be the winner if it means that he continues his form and can be a big part of the finals, which would just be lovely to see. It would really cap off his career. Yeah.
What else you got there, Jeff?
Well, Ken, that next question, mate, is another superstar, and this one's about what happened with Ben Cousins, and I know he's back in the news a little bit at the moment, but do you think what happened around Ben Cousins was more of a club culture thing at West Coast, or
an individual thing?
Or an individual, because he was a superstar, wasn't he?
I think some of the sportsmen can get carried away. I think that they live in this amazing big bubble, and even as Shane Warne, the cricketer, was like this. Like, he wouldn't have to pay any bills. He wouldn't have to go to the post office to wrap up a parcel and send to anybody. He'd have underlings, from family to managers, to do all this sort of stuff. And I think sometimes you can become less sensible that way, if you literally have this exalted status. I think Cousins believed some of his own publicity, and especially in Perth at that time, a one-club town. Freo had come into it, but they were very much the poor relations to West Coast. But the facilities over there at West Coast and the superstars, they were everywhere, and they were just feted everywhere they went. People would let them walk ahead of them, and these sorts of things. And Cousins unfortunately, and who knows how they fall in with the wrong crowd. He certainly did. He's got a fantastic father who played footy over here with Geelong. But yeah, he just started to mix with the wrong crowd, and I don't see any way out of it. He had a terrific girlfriend, fiance, but it's just been so fractured and so complicated. I feel so sorry for those around him, and I feel sorry for Ben as well, because he was a superstar. He was a magnificent footballer at his best. He had that big tank, and he could just keep on going, like a Robert Harvey, who that I love so much. But yeah, I just think I don't know if it was the overall part of the culture. I don't think others were necessarily falling into bad habits. I think West Coast realised how big and strong some of the other teams were over on the East Coast, and one of the pre-seasons, maybe two, they worked really hard. Malthouse had them working really hard at the weights, and Johnny Worsfold, boy, did he bulk up, and a lot of them did, but I don't think it was through adverse use of drugs that they shouldn't have had access to. I think Cousins fell into the wrong crowd and made the wrong decision, and unfortunately there was no way that he could come back into the fold, and that was so sad.
Yeah, I'm like you. I think it was totally outside, and that's what I can believe it was. Just being around the wrong parts of town and being in with the wrong people. But I suppose that goes on, Ken, straight on to, I know we've spoken about it, I know you've done it I know you've had questions thrown at you about the Essendon drug scandal, and well, I suppose there's no need to go into that so much, the Essendon drug scandal, because that was quite in depth, but certainly one of the questions was, will James Hird coach again? That was part of that question with the Essendon drug scandal.
I really don't know if anybody would take a risk, and just on that drug scandal, Hird was getting the mail out of his letterbox one day, and his missus was there, I think it's Tanya, and she said to him, your skin, it's turning green. And James, what do you mean it's turning green? He was having all this sort of extra stuff, as well as the players, all for vanity reasons, sheer vanity. Wow. And James Hird is a smart man, like he's got university degrees, and I think that he's an excellent coach, but I don't know, is there too much baggage there? You would like to think that footy could be his salvation, that he could get back, he could be forgiven for what happened, but boy, it's what a fractured mess it is. Like Bobber Thompson, I don't know
Bobber Thompson, that's the other
trouble that he is in right now, and James Hird himself, you just don't know, what's going through his mind. But he was one of the people that rubber stamped this, and they literally didn't take the advice of Doc Reed, who's still around the club now. Doc Reed didn't like all this sort of stuff happening. He thought it was totally revolutionary and totally wrong, they were going to get into trouble, but they were just looking for this extra edge. They wanted an extra edge to be a little bit like West Coast, if you like, from those early 90s when they did bulk up. But boy, did it backfire, and it's still backfiring. Like, Essendon are saying they play a good footy now. Tippy, the Aboriginal, probably the best number 43 in the history of the game. He's been playing marvellously well, and I'm sure that come the big Dreamtime game that they'll play well, the Bombers. But it's been such a mess for so long, and to see young Watson deprived of the Brownlow, have to hand in the Brownlow medal, I thought that was one of the saddest things I've ever known in sport.
That was tough to watch. That was tough. That was hard, because he was a gun player.
Certainly. Now, Ken, this next one, mate, I'm jumping in backwards and forwards a little bit here, but I do know this one came from Craig from Victoria, and he's asked for your most memorable interview, who it was with and why. So the best interview that you've done and the most enjoyable for yourself.
Is that football?
Either.
Either. Could be any sport.
I reckon one of the questions too is one interview, Ken, that didn't quite go right. So I'll do that one first. And we were playing cricket over in England in '87, and with the Crusaders, we had a pretty handy team. In those days, I was bowling okay leg breaks. In fact, I had the late Prime Minister Bob Hawke caught at the MCG one day, and literally literally, he walked off. He said, "First time I've been caught out by a journalist, in 25 years," he said. So I was playing for the Crusaders again, and I got the first wicket, might have been a caught and bowled or whatever, and in came this pretty smart-looking girl, walked batting at first drop for the team, and walked straight to the wicket, took guard, and we were all. And this was before the women's cricket really took off, and we've been watching some of late, and some of the girls are just fabulous to watch. And she took guard, and I said to the captain, what do we do here? Do we surround her with the field? And he said, no, just leave it as it is. And I bowled what I thought was a pretty good leg break, and she skipped down the wicket and actually powered the ball straight back at me. I only just got my hands to the ball to stop it, and I can still feel the tinkle in the fingers now. She timed it beautifully. She didn't get a lot. Might have got 12 or 14 this particular day. I certainly didn't get her out. She was too good for me. Yeah. And afterwards, we're having at the aftermatch. I walked up to her and I said, introduced myself. I'm Ken Piesse. I'm the leg spinner for the Crusaders. You really should. I was really impressed by how well you batted. You really should make something of your cricket, And the wicketkeeper was just there with me, Mark Frothy, said, "You bloody idiot bastard, that's Jan Britton. She opens for England." Oh dear. So I really put my foot into that way. As to the best interview, there's been a heap of really, really good ones. I think my biggest story, and I might have told it on board ship when we were there, working with Pienne in regard to Darren Jolly, the big ruckman for then Sydney. Collingwood, and playing in a flag at Collingwood. But I literally met him years earlier. He was at Melbourne and literally on the rookie list, and they were training down at Sandringham, which is on the seaside, about half an hour out of Melbourne. Trevor Barker Oval, one of my best mates in life before he died young. Trevor Barker, the St Kilda legend. And the big fella, Big Darren, was down from Ballarat. I introduced myself and I said, "Wow, big fella, before you finish your career, you're going to ride that bike thousands and thousands of kilometres, because the big fellas, they need so much work in their legs." And we had a really nice chat, and I did a story with him, and obviously we've gone pretty well. So he ended up in Sydney, and they won the 2005 flag, and they were in the preliminary final of 2006, and they were playing up in Sydney, and I was going to Sydney to finish my Universal Summer Cricket Tour guide, as I always do in September. And that night I went out on the Friday night, because I was working for the Sunday paper, and this was a Friday match, and they played Freo, and they blew them out of the sky. Freo came back in the third quarter, but they gave them too much of a lead, and Big Darren had a really good game. So immediately afterwards, and these days you have media managers that temper what you can do and what you can't do. And this particular day, the media manager at Sydney, everybody who was there was going in to see the captain of Sydney, Barry Hall, and the coach of Sydney, Paul Roos. And I was hanging back because I was writing for the Sunday paper. This was a Friday night, and the media manager said, "Oh, do you want to talk to one of the players then, Ken?" I said, "That'd be really great." He said, "What about Big Joel, Darren Jolly? He played well today." I said, "That'd be lovely." So I congratulated Joel, and I said, "Mate, half of Ballarat, you must have got about 80 tickets for him last year. You might even need more. There'll be more people on the bandwagon this year." He said, "Ken, I reckon you're right, but I'm just not sure about Diane." "Oh, what's wrong? I hope everything's all right." "Oh, no, everything's fine, but she's due." "Oh, yeah, okay, that's great. Next weekend, next Saturday." "Next Saturday? That's grand final day." He said, "Yeah, that's right."
I remember it.
I said, "Wow, what are you going to do?" He said, "I'm going to be at the birth of my child, my first child."
Yeah.
Wow, I said, and I sort of, as a journalist, you love scoops, and I sort of looked around, and it was good. Every other journalist had gone into the major press conference.
Missed it.
I was one-on-one with Big Joel.
Yeah.
And I said, "Mate, well, I know I've got 5 kids. I know a little bit about kids. Is she really wearing the kid way out front? Because if she is, it'll be a boy for sure. They'll hang on. You'll be able to play Saturday, have the kid on Sunday, and away you go."
Exactly.
Moral of the story, little baby girl Madison induced Friday night. Darren spent the night in hospital, and literally the Sydney boy, he got to play in the grand final next day. They lost the final, but only by a couple of points, mind you. But Darren was a winner no matter what happened, because he had the first. I think they've got 3 kids now, he and Diane, which was lovely. But it was a scoop story, and the story headlined headline in the Sunday papers the next on the Sunday, 2 days later, was on I'll miss grand final to have baby sort of thing, you know, and it went around all the news Sunday papers, the News Limited Sunday papers all around Australia. Probably the biggest footy story that I've ever done. So that was the most satisfying interview. I've done some great cricket ones over the years too, but that was a heap of fun and probably remains the biggest story. And we actually did put the headline in one of my books that I've done. People can find them on cricketbooks.com.au, but I think that was called either Favourite Footy Yarns or Great Australian Book of Footy Stories. I think that particular headline was in. So that was a heap of fun.
Just on that, Ken, a similar sort of a story. I don't know if you're aware or not, but we've actually got the world champion boxer Jeff Horn on next week. So we're really
quite excited. We're excited about that.
Getting some really good guests on, including yourself. And I've heard just recently that he's done the same thing. He's turned down a lot of money for a boxing match so he can be with his wife and have another child. So
good on him. Good on him. Great Australian champion. That's right.
Pretty admirable, isn't it? So, mate, next question for you. Ted Whiiten.
Teddy, great Ted Whiiten.
Someone would like to know a little bit more about Ted Whiiten and why he was so popular. And I'm probably the same because I hear a lot about him and see the pictures of him going around the Oval and the footy match that they do and all that sort of stuff. But I'm a little bit out of my background.
Him and Knuckles Curly, mate, wasn't they were great mates? They had the character about them, didn't they?
Oh, yeah. And footy was a different era in the 50s and 60s, but Whiiten and Ron Barassi, who's still with us, unfortunately,
yes.
EJ Senior's not, but they were the big names in footy, and TV was just coming in, and they were all over every TV because they were so charismatic. Ron Barassi would do a clinic, and EJ would do the same, and he called himself Mr. Football, and he'd always say to Ron Barassi, "You're Mrs. Football." "What do you mean, Mrs. Football?" You know, and they'd have all this banter. But Ted was a Wayne Carey type footballer. He could play at centre half back or centre half forward equally well. Only around about 6 foot, but in those days they weren't as tall. But he was a big kick of the ball. There's a very famous picture of him out of VFL Park at Waverley, where Hawthorn train now. There's no big matches at the park, but they actually had a grand final there about 1991 from memory that Hawthorn won. But EJ was pictured out there in his Adidas, because he used to work for Adidas as their marketing man, and a big torpedo punt. But he'd play in those Victorian sides and he'd be captain because he was the best player. So he was, he didn't have the pace of a Chris Judd, but he was a sticky-fingered mark, like Parker from Sydney, even better, but he was stronger and he would hand it out. But he'd always pick you, like he might drop you behind play, but then he'd pick you up. "Come on, son, you must be just acting. I hardly touched you, mate." You know, he had a handshake. He had a really big handshake on him. And when I first became a journalist, or was going for the interviews, at the Age, literally maybe the most outstanding Australian journalist of the last 50 years has been a bloke called Graham Perkin. Now, he won't be known to a lot of the listeners, but he was outstanding. He was editor of The Age, and in the 70s, it was the halcyon place to work. And I got a job there. And on the last interview, my second or third interview there, I said to my dad, "What should I do to get this job, Dad? Because I'd like it. I'd want to become a writer. I want to write cricket and footy." And he said, "Look Mr. Perkin in the eye, give him a smile, and give him the best Teddy Whiiten handshake you can." And literally, Perkin had a pretty strong handshake himself, but Teddy's was stronger. And he would you'd have to prepare yourself. And if you weren't prepared, if you shook like a little baby, he would almost like Bam Bam and Pebbles from the Flintstones. Remember, Bam 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 Bam. And so this is what would happen. So Teddy was a great player. He was a media star. He was larger than life, Teddy. He was a great ladies' man. He was very, very popular, but he was the voice and the face of the West. And Footscray had nothing, if you like. They were from the wrong side of the Yarra. They didn't have any blue bloods, but they had Teddy Whiiten. In 1954, they won the flag, and in 61, when Ted was captain, they lost to Hawthorn in the grand final. But it wasn't through any lack of effort by Teddy. He'd get there. And some of our viewers would have heard that famous speech, Teddy, 321st game. This was the record number of games played by anyone. "I want you to inspire me. I want you to lift. I know we're tired, but we can do this. The spirit of the Scray. We can do this." And you felt like you'd be lifted listening to this, and you feel like getting up and running through the nearest brick wall.
Oh,
I'm going to put the boots on now, mate.
Yeah.
I'm ready to play now.
I had a good fortune to get to know him really well, and they had that lovely lap that you boys alluded to before, where he couldn't see, he'd lost his sight. He was only a couple of weeks away from death's door, as it turned out, unfortunately, but he just loved it. He lapped it up. Little Ted Jr. was with him.
Yeah.
Dad were out on the field now, mate, everybody's cheering, and he immediately raised his left arm and he started, stick it up, which was one of his catch cries, with the Victorian team. So emotional, everyone was in tears. It was it was one of the great emotional days of footy of all time in my career watching on.
It certainly was, mate. That was one of the most moving things I'd say. Just a question from myself, mate, now from the Frothies. Do you think the 6-6-6 rule works, or doesn't it work? What's your opinion? You've watched a few games of it, obviously, so far, Ken.
Are you enjoying
watching the Hawks? Are you enjoying?
It's got out of the centre, isn't it? So it really should make Max Gawn really dominant. But somehow Melbourne's midfield, the foot soldiers haven't been as good this year.
No.
They've been playing Brayshaw out of position. I think his best stuff is done right in the engine room, right in the guts, on the ball. So they've dropped the ball there, Melbourne, and they haven't been in the same sort of form as previously. But it should lead to bigger scoring, but there's ways around it. Coaches are finding ways of being able to drop a player back and make it a more defensive game. Like Wayne Carey was criticised the other day for Hawthorn, and as you know, I'm one-eyed Hawthorn.
So am I.
When they actually beat GWS. But I reckon I agree with Wayne. Like I was working during the day, just turned on the last quarter, and they were 5 goals up, and they were clearly playing better footy. But then they started kicking the ball sideways and backwards. It was boring. It really was. I know it struck a nerve with Clarkson because last weekend they started full of running and playing attack. In the end, they were blown away by a better side. They just haven't got the foot soldiers themselves, Hawthorn, to compete. With people like Rioli retiring and Silk, Burgoyne, not being involved until just the last few weeks, and he's 35, 36 now, so he just can't do the same things that he used to do 5 and 6 years ago. But I think footy is probably a better game for it. I don't mind them tweaking the rules every now and again, but coaches are going to find a way to be able to defend. But certainly, you had that game where a side kicked 2 goals in 70 seconds to win the game, didn't they? Just a few weeks ago. So right now, coaches are finding it difficult to be able to defend if you get it out of the centre quickly. But I think it just adds another dimension. It's just going to make the coaches work a bit harder for their money.
Do you think there's some coaches out there, and I won't say any names like Brad Scott, do you think there's some coaches out there that just haven't adapted, Ken, and it's just, I don't know, is it the players' fault, is it the coach's fault?
He's saying it's affecting them.
Yeah.
I think he's written it's affected North Melbourne. I don't think, I think there's a few sides struggling with it.
So do I.
That's my personal opinion, Ken. I think some have really got it. Obviously, Geelong seem to be the only side to kick over really 100 points at the moment, and probably GWS up until that probably Hawthorn game, to be quite honest with you. They're the only 2 sides that are really kicking over the 100-point mark. Some of the scoring, as you said, is very defensive, and as you say, they always find a way to. I think they're setting up probably more towards the wing now because they can run out further, can't they? They can bring the ball out a bit further, and I think they're setting their ruckman up along that line, and it just keeps more of a defensive.
Well, it's a lot more
part of the game.
Flooding in the middle of the game now instead of the back line. It's all happening.
So I thought it was designed originally. I thought perhaps they were looking at going back a little bit to yesteryear, where your half forwards would stay at half forward and your wing would be on your wing and so forth. But that doesn't seem to have gone like how I thought it would.
No.
Oh yeah, that's right. It's only happening in the first 10 seconds after the bounce, isn't it? From that point of view,
exactly right.
This is where, like you made the point there, this is where coaching staffs are just so important. And some, let's face it, some coaches, they're more cluey, and they've got cluier people, more talented people around them than other clubs. And Clarkson has been amazing at Hawthorn. They call him the little master. Yet another one like Abletts Jnr. But I've been at countless games where Hawthorn have been blown away, not so much this year, but they've been blown away in the first quarter, 5 goals to 1. You know, Geelong would regularly jump them in that Easter Monday game. Yet at half-time, Clarkson's got them either ahead or literally level pegging. And you just wonder how he actually orchestrated that. But they can analyse the game and they can shut down a couple of areas and they can control the ball and they can control the pace that the game is played at, either fast or slow. They really are masters at it. And whereas, you know, we talked about Teddy Whitten and it was lead by example and it was fire and Frim, lots of bluster about it all, you know, the inspirational follow me stuff. It's much more scientific now, and this is where the best coaching staffs invariably, if there's a 50-50 game, invariably they'll win that 50-50 game just through their sheer expertise. And as you say, some of the coaches are getting this 6-6-6 better than the others.
Yeah.
So just on that, and this is just a big overturn of what we're just talking about. It's all just wrap this in one. This is what I've got. Is the game in trouble with overcorrectness of rules, e.g. less runners, water boys, interchanges, etc., and just general rule changes, which I think you said isn't a bad thing to the game?
A bit.
Are we being a bit precious when they say we can't boo at the football? We've been said that some people when we go to, well, not me personally, but when at the football, some of the comments, if you go back to the Goods incident, we don't need to raise that ugly head there, but obviously there is racist comments towards himself and to Eddie Betts and to some of the, and not just the Aboriginal boys too. I mean
Mason Cox would be commenting as well.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of that going on, and also the it's a big question, mate. But also, I don't know. Going back in Victoria, I can remember going back to the football and going over there for years. I've never noticed like absolutely crowd fights. Actually, people fighting within the crowd. I gather it's always been there, but it certainly seems to be something that's really going on now, and it's televised, and it's not a good look for the game either.
No, it's a bad look for the game, and you asked me about its footy improved in every area it has, except for goal kicking.
Yeah.
And this year, the crowd control, and that Carlton Collingwood stuff that happened a few weeks ago, that's not good, and the AFL must have been so unhappy about it because they're trying to make it a family game. There's more girls, more women that go to the footy than men these days. You've got to make it a safe workplace, both for the players, particularly for the and for the public. A couple of issues there, and maybe with the Wayne Goods, and I know that there's a documentary upcoming and so on, and people might not agree with me, and it's not being racist. I love Wayne Goods as a footballer. I think it's fantastic. That day at Sydney, when he actually charged into the pocket and he did his war dance in front of the Carlton cheer squad, I reckon he was totally over the top. I reckon he was totally being deliberately provocative, and it doesn't matter if he and his other Indigenous boy who was playing for Sydney, one of them was going to do this dance, whoever kicked the goal or whatever, and they'd be practicing doing something different during the week. But to me, it was really an inflaming situation, like it was baiting the crowd, and it wasn't a good look. And people were saying, oh, poor Adam Goods, and gee, we're all racist and so on. He was the one, to me, that brought it upon himself. Now, I might be, Caroline Wilson won't agree with me, but I might be standing on my own and going out in the Bass Strait in a canoe with no oar. But I really believe that was right, and I'll be interested to see, because it's all do good stuff these days. You got to be politically correct. I just reckon Adam let himself down in that particular instance. And when I see him one day, I'll say, mate, it didn't do you any harm. It didn't do you any favours. What happened that day in the forward pocket in front of the Carlton crowd?
Can I just say, Ken, I was actually, funny enough, I was there the day that the booing started. I had my family. I was actually at the MCG watching Hawthorn and Sydney. And that's where the booing started. Now, the question to me, and I was sitting in amongst Sydney people, where I was sitting behind the goals. Now, there was an incident there where Goods, I think, upended a player. And no one really took a lot of notice of it, but a lot of the Hawthorn people saw it. Now, he got booed every time he went near the ball from there. Now, to me, none of the media picked that up. I picked it up being at the ground, and I saw the incident, and he was booed.
Yeah.
He was booed every time he went near the ball. It wasn't booed at the start of the game. He was booed during the game
For what he did.
Now, how many times did you or go to the football, or any of us go to the football, whether it be Ted Whiiten days or whatever, and someone was dropped behind play, and one of the questions was we booed. And you're
That's
allowed to do that, and that's what
every time the provocative action person went near the ball, they would get it, which is
that's right.
our Aussie way of saying, mate, you've overstepped the line, which I think is perfectly okay.
That's true.
So, gee whiz, some of the people pay a lot of money to go to the footy, and I realise that you shouldn't scream out to the umpires, and certainly Daisy from Carlton shouldn't have said what he said to the umpire, because we need our umpires, because it just reflects all down the line from AFL right through to the junior ranks. I reckon people, if they pay their money, they're entitled to, as long as they don't cross the line, that's a good thing. But I just thought that particular action of Goods, I just thought was deliberately demonstrative, and it's a really good point that you make about how Goods have been involved in that earlier action in that game, because I didn't go to that particular game, and I had thought that was a reaction from that previous weekend, when in fact, as you said, it was from the earlier incident in quarter one.
He put a guy on his backside behind the play, and that's when it started. And I got a bit of a buzz out of it afterwards, because I thought that the media picked it up, but they didn't pick up the incident, and then it just continued from there. So I think Jeff had a question there.
I'll pack the car. We're just about to head to the junction for the big dinner that we're running, but I've got time, lads.
Is that okay? Look, mate, we might jump straight into some of the cricket questions, if that's all right. One of the questions is Ritchie Benaud. Did you know him? Did you spend any time with him? What sort of a guy was he like, if you know?
So I can't remember watching him bowl live. I first started following cricket 63-4, but the Melbourne Test match he was injured, and he didn't play in that particular game. So I really only knew him as a media person. And on his 75th birthday, I was doing a lot of material stories for Fox's Inside Cricket. And literally, I got Ritchie, who was on promoting one of his autobiographies, did 4 or 5. It might have been my spin on cricket. And he came into our radio studio in Melbourne at RSN, or Sport 927 as it was. And literally, we did a little Fox TV bit as well. And I said, oh, by the way, Ritchie, what did Daphne, as in Mrs. Benaud, what did Daphne give you for your 75th? Well, actually, Ken, she gave me a new number 1 driver, a new number 1 wood, and I can tell you, Ken, faithfully, no lie, I'm hitting him out of sight. I can't see him, I'm hitting him that far. And literally, he used to have to wear glasses and so on, but his long sight wasn't as good as it used to be. Yeah. And certainly with the cricket with Channel 9, he'd have a pair of binoculars, but as a commentator, he was just spot on. Yeah. As a leader of that Channel 9 group for 35 years, and even when he had gone, Channel 9's very last bit of play, I think the Sydney Test match from a couple of years ago, and this has been a Channel 9 presentation. It was Ritchie talking, they still hadn't let him rest in peace. He was still working for a living, but so loved and so smart. He had this great tan, Ritchie Benaud, like a great cricketer, but he had a great tan because he barely would have winter at any stage. He'd spend summers in England and in France, and then come back to Australia with Daphne for the Australian summer. But he was an all-rounder, really a genuine all-rounder who could bat and bowl beautifully. And in 1958-59, he was captain of Australia for the first time. They won 4-0 against England, and he just starred. He had this flipper, a little bit like a Shane Warne flipper, which, if you like it, is sort of squeezed out like an orange pip out of the bottom of your hand, rather than being flicked over the top as a wrist spinner normally bowls his leg break. And it would just hurry on and sort of zero in, almost in dip at the right-handers, and you get a lot of LBWs from that. He was a great, great bowler, and 2 248 wickets. So, he's still amongst the 10 top wicket takers even now in Australian Test cricket history. He was the leading bowler there for many, many years, ahead of Graham Mackenzie, the great West Australian known as Garth, because he had this great physique. He was a comic book hero. And my favourite story about Garth, you won't mind me going off a tangent here, he was chosen age 19 for the 1961 Australian Ashes, and they literally went across by boat in those days. And Ritchie Benaud was interviewed. Actually, Mrs. Mackenzie came up to Ritchie afterwards and, will you look after my boy? Like it's his first time away from home. And there was Garth with this amazing physique upstairs, already surrounded by about 6 or 7 pretty girls who were going to share the shipboard cruise with him all the way to Southampton. And Benaud looked up at Mackenzie and all these girls already around him, and he said to Mrs. Mackenzie, I think your boy will be okay, Mrs. Mackenzie. He had a delightful sense of humour,
Mate, just quickly, another one that's been sent in. The question was about Brad Hodge. I rate Brad Hodge extremely high. I think he's an amazing player.
Victorian cricketer,
what I saw. And I suppose this goes for Brad Hogg as well, Hodge and Hogg, that why they didn't get to play more games for Australia.
It's too strong.
Well, I've done a book called Australian Cricket Scandals. It's out now, or people can get it from the cricketbooks.com.au website. And Hodge is chapter 3 there. Why did Dean Jones not get picked more in his 30s when he was scoring runs by the hundreds and thousands of Victoria? And why did Hodge only get 6 test matches? He was dropped literally 2 test matches after making a double century, and against South Africa, of all people. Like some pretty handy. They weren't cheap runs against, and nothing against the Sri Lankans, but at Manica Oval in February, it was a road, and I think Australia made about 800 runs across 2 innings for about 9 wickets down. 4 blokes made centuries. Joe Burns made 180, and now he's not a bad player, Joe Burns, but I don't know if he's a 180 person in a test match, not against South Africa or against England. Hodge made 200 against South Africa. He was a star player, but just something went wrong. In the Melbourne Test match, he just got too much immediately after the Perth Test match. He was the hometown hero. He was the boy that everybody wanted to do well at. And he said that's the one moment that he would have liked to have had back again, because he said he wanted to play the flamboyant style. He had Ponting at the other end, who was his hero, batting with his hero. But he said, I just got too flashy, and he literally tickled the catch in the first innings before he was set, and he was out cheaply in the second, and he missed out in Sydney, and suddenly, instead of being on a tour of Sri Lanka where he could have really cashed in, he was out, not to return until he was a 40-year-old playing 2020 cricket. So it was sad, and Greg Shippard at our big dinner that we did, this Tim Paine dinner tonight, the previous year we had Brad Hodge as our guest, and Greg Shippard said it was not only a tragedy that Hodge didn't play well, but he thought it was a scandal that Brad Hodge didn't play more often for Australia, and hence I put the Brad Hodge chapter and explained why in that latest book of mine, which is full of anecdote. I'm sure some of our watchers tonight would have seen the book and would know it. So I was a big Hodge man. I still am, and he's one of cricket's great characters, and certainly from Melbourne's point of view, from Victoria's point of view, maybe the best Victorian cricketer of the last 50 years, and I include Warne in that, because Warne didn't play as much for Victoria as some, but Hodge's performances for the Dicks were just sensational.
Wow. Mate, we'll try, actually I might even try and get him on the show, I reckon. I'll have a crack at that one. Question about David Warner, and we all know the answer, but we'll throw it at you anyway, and I think we spoke about this last time you were on. Should he come straight back into the World Cup team? And
well, he's in it.
He's in it, and the answer is simple. He is in hot form, except for last night's game.
So Smith starting to get form too,
so you are in agreement to that, aren't you? Warner and Smith just coming straight back in. More Warner.
Oh, yeah. And we'll be talking about this tonight with Tim. Like, it might be a complication. Some might say that Tim as captain shouldn't have to put up with this sort of thing, with those renegades coming back.
Yeah.
But they did the crime. Warner in particular did the crime. Smith agreed with it. But as captain, he had to get an equal penalty. But they're playing well, and they deserve their spots. And if you look at the stats, of the people that have made Test centuries for Australia, Warner and Smith have made, if you like, in the last 10 years, probably 70% of those hundreds for Australia. So they deserve to be in any cricket team that they want to be in for Australia, if it's 2020, 50-50, or in particular Test cricket. It was so unfortunate they got ahead of themselves. I think Warner got ahead of themselves, but we've talked about that. Maybe he had done the wrong thing previously. One day, I'm sure it's going to come out. I've got no doubt about that. But I'll be asking Tim some of those harder questions. But as a World Cup squad upcoming, we've got a big chance, the Australians. But you need Stark to be playing well. You need Cummins to be playing well. And you need Finch up the head of the order to really lead the way as captain. He got it wrong against the Indians, probably because they kept on playing India about 10 or 12 times in a row. And some of their boys, the boy with the straight arm action, wasn't he just brilliant for the Indians against Australia? He gets kept on knocking him over, LBW or bowled. It's going to be a bit easier for Finch over there in England where they are now. So I think the Australians can do well, and I reckon they deserve almost to be equal favourites coming into the Test series. We've never won a Test series. Even Ricky Ponting in 2 attempts couldn't do it. But the last time we won in England was 2001, and I reckon Tim Paine's side, if Stark can stand up and play most of the Test series and swing the ball, I think he can be just as dangerous as Jimmy Anderson, who has taken all those Test wickets, but surely at some stage, at 36, 37, surely at some stage you're not going to be able to quite do it as well as you used to be able to do it.
Can I just say one thing, Ken, while you do talk to Timmy tonight? You just pass on, mate, and I'm sure this goes for just not you and me and everyone else, but Tasmanians, Australians. But one thing that Tim's done, I don't know if it's just through him and also the board or what they've done, but he's galvanised these guys, and just with his demeanour, I know what sort of guy he is. And the thing is that they have had a good look at themselves, good hard look at themselves in the mirror, I think, some of these guys. And I think now it's more about these two boys, Smith and Warner, and that, who are brilliant cricketers, and we can't take that away. They are, as you said, they've done their time and done the crime sort of thing, and I think that under Tim's guidance and everything else now, that hopefully there's a little bit of harmony and back to the Australian way, mate, of just going out and playing cricket hard but fair.
Well, this is what we didn't like in South Africa. We don't mind losing Australians, but let's lose with dignity, please.
Exactly.
Please. I really think it's going to be a great series. We're going to be across there with the Australian Cricket Society for a couple of Test matches. Lords, we always don't miss Lords, and with Leeds, and then I've got a few more cruises booked for later in the year as well with Pienne. So I'll have news of that on my website, so just have a little bit of a look every now and again.
You don't want me to carry your bags, mate, do you? You don't want me to carry your bags?
Boys, I always love chatting to you.
Yes,
when
we'll let you go.
Cruise ships, but Friday Frothy, to be invited back, I really feel blessed.
That's any time, Ken.
And I wish you all the very best for the weekend.
No, any time, mate. And look, you enjoy tonight.
Yes.
And say hello to Tim, and a big shout out to his father, John. I know, so out to the family, they're a great family. We appreciate having you on. I hope your family's well.
Yes, and enjoy your cruising.
Enjoy your cruising, mate, and enjoy life.
Thanks, lads. Thanks for all the best.
Thank you very much, Ken. See you, mate.
Take care.
Thank you. Thanks. Well, there you go, Glennie. What do you reckon, mate? Ken Piesse, the master, he's a legend.
Nothing's changed, mate. It's just a pleasure to talk to someone that's so passionate. How passionate? I get passionate. We're all passionate.
Yeah.
I think we're all passionate. If you love your sport, I could sit there for hours, and I mean hours, and talk to the guy. And what people forget is these are just little iceberg questions, sort of thing that we're talking about. If you wanted to sit down. Probably the easiest way I could describe is you can't sit down with him, but what you can do is go out and buy one of his books, because there is only 75 of them. And trust me.
Now, while you're on that, this
one is a rip.
I'm actually going to give this away to someone at the moment.
It's a rip snort.
So, Glenn and Al, we've got this fantastic book of Ken Piesse's that we said that we were going to give it away. How are we going to give it away, Al?
Well, we said to everyone that if you made a comment on any of the live streams or if you made a comment on Facebook, we take your name, we pop it in a drawer. So what we'll do is we will put all those names into a drawer, which we will do live possibly tomorrow or over the weekend.
Yes.
And then we will send this one off to the winner. So
There you go.
So you've got to be in it to win it.
There you go. There you go.
Okay, well,
All right, guys.
fantastic.
Well, I hope you've enjoyed Ken Piesse tonight. We can't talk him up enough. Again, just an absolute legend.
And of course, talking to Timmy Paine.
Yeah, having dinner with him tonight. Yeah. So hopefully he passes on a good word for us at the Froth, because I've actually got someone else asking Tim Paine if we can come onto the show. Maybe we'll get the whole crew on. Maybe we could get Tim Paine to come to the Rugby Union Club for a live interview.
Well, the Eastern Shore Rugby Club, because Tim, being an Eastern Shore man,
just putting it out there.
That's
it for tonight. I hope you've enjoyed the show, guys. I hope you'll pass this on and share it with your friends, and don't forget to join us next week for Jeff Horn, world champion boxer. So from Vegas, all the way from Brisbane. So can't wait for that. So next week, any of you guys that that are like your boxing and all that, this is the man. This is the guy, because he's got a long way. Some of the bouts that he'll have coming up will be interesting to talk to him about. Jeff, interesting. Okay. Sayonara. Good night, everyone. Have a great weekend. Thanks very much. Thanks for coming. Cheers. Bye. Lucky bugger. So hopefully he pushes on it. Whoa. Hopefully.
Hang on. A good blooper.
He's had another frothy. Jeffy's had a frothy.
It's been a long week.
He's had another frothy. I think you've got.
Hi, Columba.